Well, as we've mentioned repeatedly today, Donald Trump has officially been back in office for 100 miserable days. And the overwhelming consensus in poll after poll after poll is that Trump is objectively the least popular president in modern American history. And these 100 days have been an abject disaster, according to most Americans. But Trump just wrapped up a speech in Michigan in which he tried desperately to rewrite reality and pretend that that's not the case. And it's one of the most unhinged speeches of his entire political career, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to get through. Brace yourselves. Let's start with the beginning.
And we're here tonight in the heartland of our nation to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people. This is the best, they say, 100-day start of any president in history, and everyone is saying it. We've just gotten started. You haven't even seen anything yet. It's all just kicking in.
Well, when you say you haven't seen anything yet, that's extremely ominous, extremely discouraging. Of course, he's full of shit. The overwhelming majority of polls, including Fox News polls, right, even from conservative pollsters, is that Trump is wildly unpopular and people are not happy with him on any topic. He's even underwater on immigration as well as the economy. So again, just total revisionist history by Trump. Let's continue.
Days. Think of that. This is all done in 100 days. But when you watch the fake news, you see fake polls. Again, they poll more Democrats than Republicans. Democrats aren't going to say, I'm going to vote for Trump. And we still got 45, 44%. But on the legitimate polls, I think we're in the 60s. I think we're in the 60s or 70s or something.
So again, he just can't deal with the fact that no matter who the pollster is, again, he's underwater. And according to Rasmussen, Quinnipiac, even John McLaughlin, his preferred pollster has him underwater, not as much underwater as the other polls do. But this is the polling consensus. I think Nate Silver, prior to some of the more recent polls, had him underwater by 9 points, if not more so. He just can't deal with the fact that he's not and never has been particularly popular. So as you can see, like one guy in the background was nodding like, yeah, sir, I think you're like 99% popular. Like it's a cult.
If our bill doesn't pass, the Republicans, we have 100% just about Republican support, but it would be nice if we had just a couple of Democrats just to make sure, because, every once in a while you have a grandstander Republican. We have some grandstanders, but every once in a while, not many, but remember who those grandstanders were and vote them the hell out of office, okay? Will you do that?
So much for the party of freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of principle, right? Like, oh, you have principled disagreements with the party leader? Oh, that's so be it. No, Trump tolerates no dissent. There is no party as censorious as the Republican Party. And this is what is intimidating so many Republican lawmakers, including members of the so-called Principled Freedom Caucus, who are nominally opposed to the sort of, budget detonating bills that Trump proposes because he's not fiscally responsible. But most of them, if not all of them, with the exception of Thomas Massie, will fall in line because ultimately they're cowards. We'll continue.
Cross. Right, Dr. Oz? Cross that one off. Cross that one off. No, they say it all the time. When I was out, they say, well, they go out.
So that's them talking about Trump serving an unconstitutional third term. They are desperate. This is what I mean. The MAGA movement is objectively an authoritarian cult of personality. They're not interested in constitutional conservatism to the extent such a thing ever existed. It's a cult. And even though the 22nd Amendment explicitly forbids third terms because it codified the precedent established by President Washington, they don't care. At the end of the day, it's all about Trump. It's all about a specific outcome. It's dangerous.
Party. They have no candidates. And when they say that Bernie's probably the best they have. By the way, he's about 7 years older than me, more, 8 years older. One thing I got to give him credit, he's a lunatic, but he's still pretty sharp. And he's going around with AOC +3, the +3 follow him. They hang on for little bits. They hang on for nuggets. And they get crowds. They say, our crowds are so much bigger than their crowds. Their crowds are small. If I ever had a crowd like their biggest crowd, they'd say it's over for Trump.
So Trump is still this Freudian obsession with crowd sizes. We saw it all the way back to his first term when his inaugural crowd was significantly smaller than President Obama's in 2009. Trump still couldn't cope with it. Vice President Kamala Harris dinged him pretty hard, totally derailed him in the debate. That's where he was definitively unable to rally any sort of victory. That's when he was destined to fail in the debate, when she dinged him on his crowd size. It's some sort of weird Freudian thing with him.
Out of here. In 100 days, we have delivered the most profound change in Washington in nearly 100 years. I read an editorial today that this is the most consequential presidency in history. How about that? And it wasn't even by a group that would normally be supporting us. It was a group of people that I think they tend to be on the liberal side, but they said it's the most important election, the November 5th, that changed it all. You have to see.
Listen, nobody will deny the fact that Donald Trump is a consequential political figure. He's one of, if not the most consequential political figures in American history. There can be no question about that. In much the same way as Hitler was one of the most consequential figures in human history. And I know some people, oh my God, are you comparing Trump to Hitler? No, my point is using the hyperbolic example of Hitler, which is consequential is not an endorsement. It just means that you have impacted history in a huge way. That doesn't mean that you've done so in a good way. And Trump is too stupid to understand that. But yes, there's no question that Trump has been incredibly consequential. And I expect we'll be dealing with the negative repercussions of him for decades to come. Let's continue.
20, he did so good for me. And, you know, he was in North Carolina. He did so great. What's the problem over there? What's the problem? Is that a radical left lunatic? He's just a child. All right, get him out. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, ma'am. I thought it was a guy. Thank you. And she now has to go home to a mother who's a big Trump fan. Her mother's watching. I'm sorry.
So that's Trump expelling a protester, again, handling it far less gracefully than President Biden and Vice President Harris did when there were protesters and hecklers at their crowd. But again, that's because Trump is censorious and doesn't believe in free speech or free protest. He doesn't even try to engage with that person the way that Biden and Harris did with their protesters. No interest in it. We'll continue.
States, think of it. And they're saying, and you know what? And inflation is basically down. And interest rates came down despite the fact that I have a Fed person who's not really doing a good job, but I won't say that. I want to be very nice. I want to be very nice and respectful to the Fed. You're not supposed to criticize the Fed. You're supposed to let him do his own thing, but I know much more than he does about interest rates, believe me.
As a reminder, it was Donald Trump who appointed the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell in the first place. So again, if Powell sucks, it's an indictment of Trump. That means Trump sucks, objectively speaking. But Powell doesn't suck. He was appointed by Trump. He was reappointed by President Biden to his position. And Trump's war, his public war against the Federal Reserve, against Jerome Powell, and his threats to illegally fire Jerome Powell, caused the stock markets and the economy to be so volatile. Was one of the major components of that. And that was ultimately what prompted Trump finally to back off. And now he seems to be testing the line again. So I'd just tell Trump to be careful, because if he goes too far against Powell, it will upset the markets once again, which will be disastrous for his poll numbers. Here's another clip. So that's MAGA cheering on a video, and I imagine as far as the White House is concerned, it's an ASMR video, if not a sizzle reel, of migrants being sent to a torture camp in El Salvador. As you know, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an undocumented migrant who was allowed, or rather who was ordered by the Justice Department, was ordered by a Trump immigration judge, during Trump's first term, to not be deported to El Salvador because there was a credible case that he would be persecuted by Salvadorian gangs. Was unlawfully sent to that particular torture camp in El Salvador. And Trump has continued to not only violate court orders, but specifically even violating the Supreme Court of the United States, that on a 9-0 basis ordered him to facilitate the release of Gilmar Abrego Garcia. And MAGA is celebrating this. It's really disgusting. We'll continue.
That's why we've invoked the Alien Enemies Act to expel every foreign terrorist from our soil as quickly as possible. Never forget the same people that we now claim we're just not taking this crap anymore. We can't. They're claiming that we're not allowed to deport illegals, and they're the ones who orchestrated an 8-year campaign to jail their political opponents. Do you know what I mean? They want to jail.
So I will remind you that every year or every election that Donald Trump campaigned in 2016, 2020, and 2024, he publicly campaigned on investigating, prosecuting, and jailing his political opponents. Democrats did not do that. Trump is objectively morally inferior. When he was in office his first term, he tried repeatedly to have his political opponents investigated by the IRS, by the Justice Department, and other organs of government. In many cases, they were. His former attorney, Michael Cohen, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, all investigated. James Comey, former FBI director. All of these people were investigated by Trump. So Trump is the pioneer of lawfare as we know it today. And I'll also note that Democrats are not saying that you can't deport undocumented immigrants. You can, but you need to do so lawfully and in observance of due process. But Trump is too stupid and dishonest to recognize that or certainly acknowledge it publicly. Here's another clip.
I just let you know you're going to be very proud of this country very soon. And with my China tariffs, we're ending the greatest job theft in the history of the world. China's taken more jobs from us than any country has ever taken from another country. And that doesn't mean we're not going to get along. We get along with China. I mean, their tariff now is at 145%. So essentially, that's a big difference between that and zero. But I think it's going to work out. They want to make a deal, and we're going to make a deal, but it's going to be a fair deal. It's not going to be a deal that we lose $1 trillion a year.
So again, Trump conflates a trade deficit with, some sort of defeat. It's just not how trade deficits work. There's nothing inherently bad about a trade deficit or a trade surplus. There's nothing inherently good or bad about either of those things. Yes, China has been a bad faith economic partner in so many instances, particularly with respect to the theft of intellectual property. So there's nothing wrong in theory with surgically tariffing China. But that's not what Donald Trump did. And as a consequence of this trade war, his polling numbers have plummeted dramatically. And there's no evidence that China is making a deal with Trump. But we'll see what happens. Here's another clip.
He's the most beautiful.
Trump 2028, anybody?
So that's a Trump aide standing on stage indicating that Trump will run for, again, a third term. He's selling merchandise to that effect on his website. So he seems to be hyping up this idea that he'll violate the Constitution. Wouldn't be the first time. And MAGA would not care. There is nothing that Donald Trump can do. By definition, there's nothing that he can do which they will find egregious or will oppose him on because it's a cult. Here's another clip.
My solemn duty as commander-in-chief, I have an obligation to do it. Save our country. And that's why we got, despite the fake polls, they do these polls where they interview far more Democrats than Republicans. I saw them over the last few days, and I had them checked out. They interview far more Democrats for the polls. They interview Democrats by big numbers and then Republicans by small. They say, Trump only has a 44% approval rating. Well, it's actually not bad. But when you figure that if it were a legit poll, it would be in the 60s or 70s. These people are a bunch of crooked people.
So he's repeating himself. He said that earlier. Again, that's how his unfortunately frazzled, corroding brain works, right? He loops endlessly. Of course, Trump is talking bullshit about the polls. The polls are pretty evenly distributed. He said, Republicans only constituted 34% of the respondents. Well, that's because what he's talking about are Trump voters, and Trump voters do constitute about that much. Remember, we're talking about you have Republican voters, you have Democratic voters, you have independent voters, you have non-voters, right, who are still eligible voters. This idea that Trump voters constitute a majority of, number one, voters in this country, or just a majority in this country, is total bullshit. And again, he's too stupid and dishonest to recognize that, so he tries to delegitimize the polls to justify his low approval rating. Oh, it's just fake news. Okay, all right, Donald. Here's another clip.
I've watched him for years. I don't know him, but he likes Trump. Come here, Scott. Oh, CNN, this is the end of Scott. No, who cares? Don't worry, we'll take care of you, Scott. Scott Jennings, really great.
Thank you. Michigan. We were flying in here today, and I said, look at these farms. I got to get a farm in Michigan, because when you own as many libs as I do, you got to put a place to put them all. Thank you all very much.
Scott Jennings from CNN. He's so great. Just what a great guy. Yeah, own as many libs as you do. Man, you run in terror from Catherine Rampell. She kicks your ass every single time you guys are on screen together. It's embarrassing. I mean, you are. I mean, she is. You're basically demonstration that communism works, because you are publicly owned by Catherine Rampell and the rest of the CNN libs. So pretty funny. Here's another clip.
And on day one, I created that right now, very successful Department of Government Efficiency headed by Elon. That was a big thing doing that. I mean, the numbers are really incredible. Doge. So it was a very big thing. We terminated the left-wing money laundering scam known as USAID. How about the money that was going out?
Again, no evidence whatsoever that USAID is a left-wing money laundering scheme. The numbers on Doge are terrible. Elon is even less popular than Donald Trump. Doge is wildly unpopular in practice, and that's why Elon is apparently slinking away from the public spotlight and from the day-to-day operations of the Trump administration in shame, because it's been such an abject failure. Couple more clips.
And I banned all government censorship and restored free speech in America. We have free speech.
This one I found particularly egregious, because Donald Trump is engaging in an unprecedented war on free speech and First Amendment rights. The libertarian right-wing free speech advocacy group FIRE, their executive vice president, admitted in an interview with Mehdi Hassan that the Trump administration's war on free speech is unprecedented in scope, scale, and severity. So whatever you want to say about censorious Democrats, Donald Trump is objectively worse, according to the preeminent right-leaning libertarian, nominally pro-right free speech group. Trump is objectively worse. He's attacking law firms. He's attacking the media. He's trying to weaponize government against those whom he perceives to be his political opponents in the media and in the legal profession and just in general. So no, pretty disgusting. One last clip here.
Every single day of my administration will continue to live by the motto, promises made, and you've seen it before, promises kept.
Yeah, again, pretty ominous stuff. As a reminder, as bad as this has been, as long as it has seemed, Trump's only been in office for less than 1/3 of a year. That's where we are. And there are 4 years to go. Again, overall, the overwhelming consensus is that he is objectively the least popular president in modern American history. Most Americans think these 100 days have been chaotic and terrifying and unproductive. He is widely seen as corrupt and incompetent and authoritarian, and I can't imagine it getting any better from here. But that also makes him incredibly dangerous, so people should stay vigilant and keep monitoring what this administration does. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.